He uncovered the letter that Eric wrote claiming abuse a year before the murders.
The second Menendez trial was a complete miscarriage of justice. The brothers would have served 22 years if they'd been convicted of manslaughter, which should have been the correct verdict at first trial.
The subject is why the mom, right? If she knew about this abuse, you could see how that could be motivation.
He also told us that he had been molested by Jose Menendez, that he had been when he was 13 or 14 years old. Within 15 minutes, I found this letter. It says, "It's happening again, Andy. I'm worried every night that I'm going to hear Dad coming down the hall. I know too much about this case. There are moments when I waver about certain things, and some of that might come out after the brothers are set free."
A Beverly Hills bloodbath. Lyle and Eric Menendez slaughter their parents, claiming a lifetime of abuse. Now, there is one person on this planet who knows more about the Menendez case than anyone, bar none. He interviewed the boys weeks after the murder. He speaks with them regularly in prison. He uncovered the letter that Eric wrote claiming abuse a year before the murders. His name is Robert Rand. You know him, you've seen him, you've heard about him. Kato, he's basically given up his life for this case. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tom Zenner. This is Tom Zenner Scandal, 1 degree of scandalous with the one and only K-Train, Kato Kaelin.
It's amazing that we got this guest. It's amazing we've got the one person with all the everything Menendez.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into it, because I'm excited to meet him.
Without a doubt, joining us from Los Angeles. He started his life on the East Coast, but the Menendez case brought him here. Robert, let me get into this right away with just the elephant in the room. Is this one of the biggest injustices ever? Do these two brothers deserve to be out of prison?
The second Menendez trial was a complete miscarriage of justice. They were not allowed to put on their full defense the family history and their abuse story that was the heart of the first Menendez trial, where half of the jurors on 2 juries voted for manslaughter, not murder. The brothers would have served 22 years if they'd been convicted of manslaughter, which should have been the correct verdict at first trial. Instead, they've been in for 35 years and 6 months, and that's outrageous.
It is.
Yeah, they always say that in the second trial, it's always in favor of the prosecution.
Correct, but what was the real problem was that the trial judge, Stanley Weisberg, reversed almost all of his evidence rulings. And so the defense had put on almost 60 witnesses in the first trial to tell a detailed history of the Menendez family. And there were teachers, coaches, family members, friends that testified. In the second trial, the judge only allowed the defense to put on 25 witnesses, and those 25 witnesses were severely limited in what they could say. So the jury in the second trial heard a completely different set of evidence than the first trial, and that was the problem.
Yeah. Kato, there's so much ground to cover here. And, you know, just to let everybody know who Robert is, he was working for the Miami Herald at the time and covered this story because Jose Menendez is from Miami. There's a good local angle there. Comes out here, Kato, and gets these scoops, gets these big stories, and just stayed on it. And you've seen him. He's been in multiple documentaries. He was on Court TV analyzing the juries or some of the trials. He's got a great book that's out. Multiple long-term magazine stories. He was there for every minute of both trials. So we have the best guy here today. And Robert, maybe let me take you back to that interview you did with the boys shortly after the murder, a few months before they were arrested. What was your first impression? Did you feel like you were looking at stone cold killers, or could you tell their personality? Did they feel like they maybe had been beaten down and had been abused, and whatever you covered during that first conversation? But what was your impressions of them?
So I had a phone call the morning after Jose and Kitty Menendez were killed, and it was a friend of mine who was the editor of a trade magazine for the home video business, and he told me that a high-profile home video executive and his wife had been killed the night before, and Jose was Cuban-American, which made it a potential interest to people in Miami. And there were 7 months between the crime and the arrest of the brothers. And so the story that I was assigned to do in the fall of '89 was a biography about Jose Menendez. all the media coverage was that this was some kind of mob hit. This was something related to the home video business. And so I had met Jose and his sister, Marcano, who lived in West Palm Beach. I was in Miami. When I used the 1989 technology, I got out the phone book. I called her up. She was listed, and we spent 4 hours talking. The first day we met, about 10 days after the murders, and she told me the family story, which was quite an interesting immigrant saga from Spain to Cuba to the States. And she told me quite a bit about her brother. And one of the things she said that was the headline of my original story in 1989 was that, excuse me, Jose Menendez was planning to retire from the entertainment business in 5 years, and he was going to run for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, he's going to run for Senate in Florida.
Yeah.
And that was actually the title of the story, right? That was what Jose was going to do, and build this big compound where the whole family could live out in Florida.
Right. And so she insisted. I came out to L.A. from Miami. I interviewed many people who work with Jose in the home video business. And Marcano, Jose's sister, insisted that I meet with Eric and Lyle, because she said the family was so close-knit, they were so caring, so loving with each other, that if I was doing a biography about her brother, that I had to meet with Eric and Lyle. So 2 months after the killing of Jose and Kitty Menendez, 5 months before the brothers were arrested, I spent 3 days with them. They were not suspects publicly. I had no reason to be suspicious of them. And they were really kind of quiet, shy, immature college kids, and they were not the party animals that you see portrayed in the Monsters Menendez TV series on Netflix.
You know, I have a question that Tom's like me, and I'm raised in Wisconsin. My father had 2 restaurants, and my father was in sales, and he could read people. I can read people, I think. I can tell when a person's full of it or not. In your first meetings with Eric and Lyle, did at any time in your brain you're going, these guys are liars, or these guys are honest, these guys, or was there one brother more honest than the other? And it's because that's your job also as a reporter, is to find out, is this person telling the truth? What was your first meeting, the first impression?
I thought they were grieving sons of people that had been brutally murdered. I had absolutely no reason to suspect them. I did not suspect them. The day that I was supposed to have my first meeting with them, when I showed up at 3 o'clock, they weren't home. They were out playing tennis. And one of the girlfriends was at the house, and she spent about 45 minutes taking me all over the house to the guest house out back. And I remember every time we walked past the murder room, the room where the killings took place, I just felt a chill. And by the 3rd or 4th time that we walked past that room, I thought to myself, if my parents had been brutally killed here, I wouldn't be living anywhere near this house. So that was weird the first day. And as if on cue, the last time we walked by that room, the brothers came bouncing in the front door. They were laughing. They were very tan, very relaxed. And that was the day I met Eric and Lyle Menendez.
Yeah. One of those things that's just always hanging there, Kato, and we talk about it a lot when we cover this subject, is why the mom, right? I mean, and with shotguns, I mean, it's about as brutal as you can possibly do it. And, you think if she knew about this abuse, right? I mean, you could see how that could be motivation, right? Mm-hmm. For she knew, she didn't do anything about it. And, Robert, we'll talk to him about, the conversation that maybe had taken place between Eric and his mother when she was the night before, a couple nights before, when she was on the couch watching TV, having a few drinks, right? And they had that little confrontation there. So you got that. And then you got the sexual abuse thing. And I think, man, you go to yourself, like, why didn't it become more known early? But what a horrible thing to have to talk about, right? The details of your father allegedly sexually abusing you. So was that shame part of it? Maybe one of the reasons, maybe it wasn't just front and center right away, and that they finally, maybe got the courage or the encouragement or whatever it took to actually talk about that. What's your whole take on that?
So that's exactly what's at the heart of this case. abuse survivors are simply ashamed to talk about what they experienced. Both of the Menendez brothers never wanted to testify in court about what they had experienced with their father and their mother. And I was the creator and executive producer of a Peacock documentary that came out 2 years ago called Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, which was about the nefarious connection between Jose Menendez when he was head of RCA Records and the Latin boy band Menudo. And I'm sure a lot of people are going, what? right now. But Jose Menendez signed Menudo to a $30 million contract in the early 80s. And it turned out that Menudo had a very dark story, which I first learned about 30 years ago. And so for 30 years, I was chasing this story. And that chase included interviewing Ricky Martin in Mexico City in December of '93, in the closing days of the first Menendez trial. And Ricky was 21 years old. He was still in the closet. He told me information. We talked for about 3 hours. And at the end of the 3 hours, he said, everything I just told you is completely off the record. And if the Menendez attorneys ever try to force me to come to LA and testify, I will deny that I ever said anything to you. And I was totally in shock when that happened, because normally in journalism, you have to declare up front before you start an interview, we're going to be talking off the record. You can't do a whole interview and tell a lot of information and then say, you know what, everything I just told you is off the record. That's not how journalism works. However, I was really faced with a moral and ethical dilemma, which was, I mean, I'm obviously kind of giving away something here, but I think that you cannot out, it's not right to out an abuse survivor, and it's up to that person. You know, some people take these secrets to their graves. They are so ashamed. They never want to talk about what they experienced. Some of the former members of Menudo that we spoke with, there are a half dozen other members of Menudo that my reporting partner, Mary Ankland, my reporting partner on the documentary, she and I believed were victims of not only Edgardo Diaz, but possibly Jose Menendez. And so what we had in that documentary, Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, was we had Roy Rossello, a former member of Menudo, who came forward and said that he had not only been molested over a period of years by Edgardo Diaz, the creator and manager of the band, allegedly, but he also told us that he had been molested by Jose Menendez, that he had been raped when he was 13 or 14 years old. And in the documentary, Roy only spoke about one incident where he was molested by Jose Menendez. In the affidavit for the Menendez Brothers habeas petition that was filed the day after our documentary came out in May of 2023 with new evidence, Roy included a second incident that took place at Radio City Music Hall at a concert for Menudo in 1985. And in the 2 years since the documentary came out, Roy has now told me about, there were a dozen incidents where he was sexually assaulted by Jose Menendez. And so the reason that's so important is because for, decades, the only story that we had was that Eric and Lyle Menendez were claiming that they were abused by their father. And now we have somebody who is totally unrelated to the family who said that he was molested by Jose Menendez.
It's an amazing story. What's really amazing, and I know we have an outline of where I don't want to go forward or behind, but for them to have so much rage that they both go and they buy shotguns from this incident with Jose that we don't know. We have letters, but just the fact that they did that
Well, I can see how that they can empower each other, right? We're not in on this alone. We'll do this together.
Well, no, exactly. Yeah. And they're brothers. They're you know, like if we do this, this is it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just it's an amazing story, Robert. And the Menudo end is just, I don't know how many people are aware of that, but it's that whole entertainment field. You know, put it back up there in his book.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because if this is all true about Jose Menendez, you know, sexually abusing his kids, he was the monster, right? They made the Netflix show with Ryan Murphy was, you know, the kids were the monsters, but this guy, you know, the interesting thing is you have almost unanimous support from the family. They all want the kids out. I mean, we've had family members on the show, you know them as well as anyone, but they all want them out. And I wonder if part of that is thinking, you know, Jose could have done this. Or maybe I saw something that I didn't speak up about at the time, and these kids were going through this horrible abuse. But, you know, it is rare to see a family that united as far as their belief that the murderers should be out of prison and should be granted parole. So what's your feeling about the family dynamics there? Because there's you got ethnicities involved. You got multiple generations involved. You know, you got them living in Beverly Hills. Some of the families back in Cuba and still in Florida or wherever else. So it's a complex, deeply layered thing with the family, isn't it?
So here's something you should know about the Menendez and Anderson families. Jose Menendez was kind of the rich uncle in the family. If you needed a loan, you called Uncle Jose. If your kid needed their first job, you called Uncle Jose. So nobody ever wanted to upset the rich uncle because you never knew when you might need the rich uncle.
Right.
And so nobody had ever sat all these different relatives from around the country down together all together in one room until after this terrible tragedy, this murder took place. And when that happened, after the brothers were arrested in the spring of 1990, all the relatives, the light bulbs started going off over their heads. They started comparing notes, and they were horrified that they realized this really could be true.
Yeah. Wow. I'll tell you what, this is the type of insight that we're going to keep bringing to you. So, you know, we've been doing this show for 2.5 years, and we just thank our audience for allowing us to get to this point. We're 2 million views a month on YouTube. Kato was just swarmed at an autograph show last weekend. Everybody that came up to him knew about the show. So we really appreciate that, but we're taking it to a whole new level. And this is your chance to be part of this journey with us because we created a membership that's unlike any on YouTube. There's 3 tiers, $9.99, $19.99, and $99.99. Okay, and everyone is loaded with value. Go ahead and click on the membership button right now. Join our group. We're starting to build this thing right now, and it's only begun. And we're going to be doing live streams. We have one coming up on the 26th of September with Tom Lang, where you can ask the questions. I know how much you guys want to talk to Tom Lang and ask him the actual questions about Wonderland, about talking to OJ during the Bronco chase, his first time meeting Kato, all of that stuff. Our membership, we're putting a ton of time and effort in it, and we're going to expand to 2 episodes a month. We're going to keep bringing in great guests like Robert. So that's why we need to build this membership community and get our biggest fans to come on board with us. Take a look at the 3 levels. Sign up for one of them right now. You're going to be bombarded with value and access. I want to just give you access. I want to take you inside this studio, inside this building. We're going to be going on tours, more tours, right, Kato?
Well, it's funny you said that because at the autograph show, the people that would come up to me and say, I love when you guys go on tours. And as a matter of fact, Robert, we went to the Menendez home. So I said to the person, I said, our membership, we're going to take somebody on a tour with us. So maybe 1 or 2. And, you know, I think that's great. They're going to be riding, I shouldn't say they should ride shotgun, but they're going to be riding with us on the show. So it'll be, did I say that?
But
you know,
that can just do that on the spot?
But we have that and you can do that. And I think it'd be great because believe me, Tom's driving. Anyways, you have to sign a release. It's not a pretty sight. So
right, the scariest part is just getting in the car with me.
But it's
according
to
Kato.
It's great. It's great for a membership. Yeah. So come on one of our tours.
And that's a great tease because we're taking somebody to the Cecil Hotel with us. So sign up for a membership right now. One of these tiers is going to fit you, and you're going to love it. And we're going to be talking about more about this. Stay on our community page, and you'll get all the updates. Cecil Hotel, baby, it's coming. It's coming. I just talked to Amy, the night manager. She's on vacation right now, but look, she might be on this show next week.
That's a scary hotel.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, Robert, it's unbelievable how your life changed covering this story. This story became your life. And what was the dynamic like telling your family, hey, we're going to move to LA? Hey, this is happening. This is, you know what? This is where the story is. And you've monetized this for over 3.5 decades. It's unbelievable. But you have become this authority. So describe what that was like, telling everybody, hey, I'm moving to LA for this. And I also want to hear how close you are to the brothers now, because you've been one constant supporter for them for 3 decades. So I know our audience will love to hear, just how close you are to those guys.
Sure. Well, I was single when I was living in Miami. I was living right on the beach. I had been working at the ABC TV station there, and then left them and went to work for the Miami Herald. And so I thought I was coming to LA for maybe 2 years to cover the first trial. I had a book contract. My original book contract with Simon & Schuster. And so it wasn't difficult for me to just pick up and move, because I thought I was coming back. And then I met a woman who was a researcher working with me, and we started a relationship, and we now are together and have 2 children. And so that was how I transitioned from Miami to LA. Actually, I had worked in news in San Francisco twice at 2 different TV stations, KGO and KPIX. And I said, I will never live in LA. I like to visit here because it used to be warm in the winter here. But I said, I'll never live there. And here I am.
Never say never.
Never say never. And loving it. No humidity.
Let me get to your questions that are more important. I met Eric and Lyle Menendez in October of 1989, 2 months after the murders, 5 months before they were arrested. I had no reason to be suspicious of them. They were shy. They were quiet. The first day that I was with both brothers together, I pulled out a tape recorder and a notepad, and Lyle said to me, can you put those away? We just want to talk to you today and get to know you, and we'll do the formal interview on Sunday. This was a Friday afternoon. And I had already been in LA for 2 weeks, and I explained to him, I really have to get home to Miami. My editor won't let me stay here any longer. And Lyle said, don't worry, we'll do the formal interview on Sunday. And so the first day we just sat and talked for about an hour and a half. And one of the things the brothers said to me was they thought their father was such a great man that they were thinking about writing a book about his life. And would I be interested in working with them on this book? And so that was really what the first day was like. It was, as I said, I had no reason to be suspicious of them.
Right. And that's before they were arrested, so nobody knew they did it at that point.
Correct.
But it also sounds to me like they want to get into your good graces for a good article. That's what I'm picking up, that they're offering you something monetarily that you might be writing a book with them. I'm just saying it could be working that way also, that they could be going, we're going to sort of make Robert our friend, and then he'll write on Sunday something very complimentary towards us. But go ahead. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Kato, you're exactly right. I think they were trying to, establish a rapport with me and, become friendly with me. And so when I returned to the Menendez mansion where they were living on North Elm Drive in Beverly Hills on Sunday, I rang the front bell, and their grandmother, Maria, answered the door, and she said, oh, I'm sorry, Lyle isn't here. He had to fly back to New York to deal with a problem at his chicken wing restaurant. But she said, Eric is asleep upstairs. Do you want me to go wake him? And I said, well, I have to go back to Miami tomorrow, so I would really appreciate if I could see him. And so Eric came down, his head wet from the shower, and we spoke in an audio taped interview for 3.5 hours. And most of the interview was really about the brothers and their relationship with the parents. And at one, I was not doing an article about the murder investigation. I was writing a biography about Jose Menendez. Rags to riches, immigrant saga ends in a terrible tragedy. And so at one point I said to Eric, look, I'm not writing about the murder investigation. but I have to ask you a few questions about the night you came home and found your parents' bodies. So we spoke for about 12 minutes in that taped interview about the night of the murders. And Eric started crying softly. And again, 1989 technology, the audio cassette on my tape player ran out about 12 minutes into that topic. And Eric said to me, can we stop talking about the night of the murders? It's just very hard for me to do this. And I said, sure, yeah, of course. And that was our first weekend together. But going back to something that we said earlier, both brothers were ashamed of what they had experienced. I believe that they were abused. I believe their story is 100% true. And that is not only because of the testimony of the brothers, but I had the luxury of being a book author and being able to spend so much time talking to Cano, the sister of Jose Menendez, and Joan Vandermolen, the sister of Kitty Menendez. And they knew what was going on in this family. But they didn't tell me. Initially, they said, there's no way the brothers were involved. And then over the decades that we have known each other, they have opened up much more. And they both testified at the trials. And now they've really told me quite a bit about the family.
So just to make sure I got that straight, you're saying that family members did admit to you that they knew Jose was abusing both Lyle and Eric?
No, look, the family members never were eyewitnesses to, sexual molestation. You know, people that sexually molest children typically do not invite somebody else to come in and watch. Mm-hmm. However, there were a number of incidents of physical, verbal, and emotional abuse, which the relatives testified to at both trials. You can watch the entire first trial on Court TV's website. It's about 6 months long. So if you have 6 months to invest, and actually Court TV posted the entire first trial, and this is wild, on Father's Day, June 2020. And as you remember, that was during the pandemic. People had a lot of time on their hands. And so there were people who actually watched the first trial, where I had one of the 12 reserved seats in the courtroom. There were 200 other media people that were watching video feed in a building a block from the Van Nuys courthouse. And so what happened in the fall of 2020, my son, who was 14 at the time, came to me one afternoon and he said, Dad, you've got to go take a look at TikTok. It's full of Menendez Brothers videos. And my first reaction was I laughed. And then I went down the rabbit hole for about 3 hours, just watching these videos that were being done by supporters. Probably many of them had watched the Court TV video feed. And so for the next several months, I kept watching that this social media movement was growing, not only in the States, but all over the world. And so I called a friend of mine who's a senior editor at the New York Times. And I said, you guys really should do a story about this. This is huge, what's going on. And so they did that. They did a story in February 21 titled The New Menendez Defenders. And then ABC 2020 did a 2-hour special in April of 21. And that's how this whole current social media movement kicked off in the media.
Well, the shopping, Kato, is what, shown the spotlight, because there's so many, this was such a big story, and it was magnified because it was a double murder, which never happens in Beverly Hills. Never, period. There's no murders in Beverly Hills back then. And then the fact that, they're on Rodeo Drive and they're shopping and their dad was high profile and he was connected to OJ, which we're going to get to in a second too. All roads lead to Kato somehow when it comes to true crime. But I guess my question is, you interviewed, timeline-wise, you interviewed them in person in Beverly Hills about 5 months or so before they were arrested, I think, is how that worked out. And we all know what brought them down. It was the tape recording from the psychiatrist, right? And that whole crazy backstory with the girlfriend and, and blackmailing him. Could there have been a path for them where they never would have found a murderer if those tapes hadn't surfaced and that crazy scenario evolved? I mean, because look, they weren't arrested when you interviewed them, and it's not like they were chasing other suspects at the time. They didn't have a, unless they were suspicious of them and secretly thought they just had to build a case around them.
Actually, secretly, privately, the Beverly Hills Police started looking at Eric and Lyle Menendez within 10 days of the murders. An attorney called them, who represented the mother of one of their close friends, and she said, "You really need to take a close look at Eric and Lyle." Mm-hmm. And as for the spending spree, I just want to say something very quickly about that, which is this was a very wealthy upper class family. The entire family before the murders spent money very openly. The brothers were nationally ranked tennis players. They traveled all over the world. They had copies of their father's American Express card. And so he didn't want to be bothered with having to, give him $100 here or $200 there. So they were used to spending a lot of money before the parents were killed. So the fact that they continued spending in the same way after the murders, to me, is actually not that significant. But I understand why the media seized on the spending spree and the brothers were branded the greedy rich kids. And what happened was that for 3 years between the crime and the trial, there were issues in court connected to the therapist that Eric confessed to in October of '89 on Halloween, and his girlfriend, Judelon Smith, and their whole story could be a book in itself. Mm-hmm. It's a very bizarre story, which I cover in my book. However, Eric Menendez, 9 days after I did that 3-hour interview with him, 9 days later, he went and confessed to Dr. Jerome Oziel. And defense attorney Leslie Abramson once said to me that she wished that Eric Menendez had confessed to me when we were doing our interview instead of Dr. Oziel, because Dr. Oziel became a controversial figure in the trial. He was the star prosecution witness in the first trial, and he was so discredited, he was never a witness in the second trial. So there are a lot of moving parts to this story. Yeah, and you really need a good book to sort it out.
Yeah, with Tom's question, though, I also think that even the spending spree, even if they did that often, it gives the detectives another opportunity to research more. Maybe they don't really care about the spending, but it gets them more in their head of Eric and Lyle. And we don't know what he was thinking. And maybe with the detectives around, it just made Eric have this guilt, and it was killing him. And he finally just, confessed to these psychiatrists. He just couldn't take it anymore. I'm sure the heat coming from detectives, you can't eat, you can't sleep. And possibly he was the weaker of the brothers, and he just opened up.
So to be honest, I actually knew that the brothers were focused on the brothers at the time I interviewed them in October of 1989. But no one in the media was saying that. I mean, the reality was it was just myself from the Miami Herald and two guys at the LA Times that were following the stories in those 7 months between the crime and the arrest of the brothers. After the brothers were arrested, I wrote a cover story for People magazine. And so the story blew up not only in the States, but all over the world. It's kids killing their parents, the movie business, Beverly Hills, all those buzzwords, just blew the story up. And it was insane, the coverage that was going on back in 1990. Yeah. And what's crazy now is that now with what's happened in the past year since I re-released my book with new material, what's crazy is that now there's a new flood of media coverage, not only in the States, but all over the world. I was interviewed for a 20-minute segment, which you can see on my website, menendezmurders.com. I was interviewed by 60 Minutes Australia. Yeah. They did 20 minutes on the story. So the story is being followed by journalists all over the world.
Huh. I think I
was just going to say, People magazine doing the Menendez, it made crime entertainment. And that started sort of with you know, being in published magazines. That's really an entertainment magazine.
Right.
And that's when the whole thing with OJ and the TV, it was more entertainment and ratings.
It was because it took place in Southern California.
Well,
these
exactly.
were fascinating characters and the glitz and the glamour. And then the thing that's rejuvenated is the young people on social media right now. It's crazy how they've blown this thing up again, and there's so much support really for the brothers. I think I saw this in the 60 Minute story that you did. It was either that or the Vanity Fair story. I can't remember. But you had talked about how emotionally immature these two boys were. So if Eric was 18 or 19, he was more like a 13 or 14-year-old. Same thing with Lyle. That because their dad hovered over them so much and had such a influence on them, apparently the parents did the kids' homework all the time. And then when they'd take their tests, they'd flunk, right? So the teachers knew. But because of the overbearing presence of the parents, these kids weren't, you know, socially and a little adjusted as much and just very immature for their age, right?
That's correct. Dr. Bill Vickery, the lead defense therapy expert, told me that even though they were 18 and 21, their chronological age at the time of the crime, their emotional maturity, they were somewhere around 13 and 9 years old. And that was because the parents were very controlling with the brothers. And that is very typical in an abusive household where, I'll give you an example. The parents used to do all of the brothers' homework. So it didn't take the teachers long to figure out the homework was always pristine, and the brothers would take pop quizzes in class and they'd fail. So this was the parents trying to control everything in the brothers' lives. For example, the parents told them who they could date, who they couldn't date. And so they were really keeping a very close hold on the brothers. And as I just said, that's very typical in a household where abuse is taking place.
Yeah, you think about it too. If you know they lost their parole hearing, so they got at least another year, maybe as much as 3 before they can appeal and go through it again, which they might have a good shot at getting taken out or released. Let me ask you this: the world's different, man. The world is totally different than when they went into prison. Number one, it's a different ball game from those last 35, 36 years. The world's changed more than any other 35-year period ever. Plus, they're going to be very, very famous when they come out. They're going to have opportunities to write books, tell their story, that kind of thing. What do you think would be facing them if they did get out on parole? And do they have the support staff around it? And more importantly, do you have the book contract to write their story when
I was
they
just going to say,
out?
if Robert Rand is going to do the book.
Robert, for 35 years, you better have something, a verbal agreement or something with those guys.
Well, actually, my publisher, Ben Bella Books, wants to publish a final edition of my book when the brothers are released. I believe they will be released. I'll give you a headline right now. The Menendez brothers may have lost a battle, being denied parole a few weeks ago. However, they will win the war. I predict that the next time they go in front of the parole board, which will be 13 months to 2 years, that they will have no infractions, no cell phone use, no violence, no situations where they violated prison rules. And I predict that the parole board will release them, set them free. This case should end. They should be sent home to their family. However, there are still 2 other paths to freedom. There's a very active habeas petition, which is being overseen by a Superior Court judge in downtown Los Angeles. And that deals with the new evidence in the case. The letter I discovered that was written by Eric Menendez in late 1988 to his cousin, Andy Cano, in which he complained about the ongoing sexual abuse by his father, and also the Menendez-Menudo connection. And so I think we may see evidentiary hearings sometime in the next few months that will more closely examine the new evidence. So the habeas is one path to freedom. And there is still actually, it's not active, but Governor Gavin Newsom could wake up tomorrow or next week and just grant them clemency and they'd walk out. And what I believe is that regardless of whether you believe that they were abused or not, Eric and Lyle Menendez have been incarcerated for 35 years and 6 months. There are people that commit horrible crimes in California against strangers, and they are out in 15, 20, 25 years. And I believe that the brothers have been punished enough and they should be set free.
Yeah, I said to Tom on one of the shows, I said, the first one, the parole board has got to say, we're not going to grant you parole to show that they're kind of tough, but they're going to let them go on the second one just because they said, well, we said no the first time, but we're going to let them go this time. And that, I think that's really going to happen. You know, you had mentioned that you had I think it was in March 2024, 2024 March that you saw Nathan Hochman, and he said he was full of BS. What was the BS? Because you didn't explain what the BS. What was he talking about that was BS?
Well, let's talk about Nathan Hochman for a moment. Nathan Hochman is the district attorney of LA County, who was elected last fall, and he replaced George Gascon. George Gascon was a liberal progressive DA. He initiated the resentencing initiative for the Menendez brothers that ended in May of this past May of 2025, and reducing the Menendez brothers sentence from life without parole to 50 years to life. And what that means is that they became immediately eligible for parole. So that's how they got to the parole board. So here we have one Superior Court judge who has already reduced their sentence. And now we have a separate Superior Court judge, William Ryan, who is overseeing the habeas. And Judge Ryan ruled in July that he believed there was enough new evidence that would have changed the outcome of their trials in the 1990s. So it might not be the parole board. If the habeas petition goes forward, that could set the brothers free. But I believe the next time the brothers go back before the parole board, if they have no infractions, they will be set free.
Well, if the habeas it plays a role in this, I mean, you can pat yourself on the back, because that letter that you discovered in the cousin's house, I think in West Palm or wherever that was, you know, is going to be instrumental. So give us the story of how you ended up in that place where you were looking through his possessions after he passed away. The Menendez brother, Eric's and Lyle's cousin, died, and you were close to the family, so you got to go in there. So just talk about that, and then what you thought when you saw that thing for the first time.
Sure. I was very close to Marta Cano, the sister of Jose Menendez and the mother of Andy Cano. Over the years, she was really my number one source into the family, and I was close to her. I became close to the brothers. I became close to many other relatives, but Marta Cano was my number one source. And when I was about 2 months away from being on deadline, my original book was published in September 2018, re-released last fall with new information about Menendez Menudo. And so when I was at Marta Cano's house, she invited me to look through a dresser full of her son's papers. Andy Cano sadly passed away from an accidental sleeping pill overdose in 2003. And I was there in the spring of 2018. And I started looking through this dresser full of Andy's personal papers. And within 15 minutes, I found this letter, and I read it was a 5-page letter. And Andy and his cousin, Eric Menendez, they had a very close relationship. They exchanged hundreds of letters a year. They exchanged phone calls frequently. And so this was only one letter. And people have asked, well, Andy Cano testified in the first trial. Why didn't he remember this letter? And my answer to that is Andy and Eric exchanged hundreds of letters. So I'm not surprised that he didn't remember one paragraph from one 5-page letter. But it's a very strange letter because it sounds like two college kids, high school kids that are writing about their lives. And in the middle of the letter, Andy Cano says, "It's happening again, Andy. You know, I'm worried every night that I'm going to hear Dad coming down the hall." And it's clear what he's talking about. He also writes a paragraph about his mother, that she's totally out of it, that he can't turn to her for help. And that's why that letter is so important. But I believe actually there are other letters, and the family in Martecano has invited me to come to the East Coast and go through her storage and look for other letters, which I'm planning to do next month. So we might have some additional new evidence. But the other major piece of new evidence is the Menendez-Menudo connection, which was featured in our Peacock documentary in May of 23, led to the habeas filing the next day. And that is also very important evidence. As I said, I believe there will be hearings later this fall to go over some of that evidence.
Who knew a story could have legs for 36 years?
Yeah, exactly.
Like legit. Like real updates, real new information. You know, the ending hasn't been told yet. And then you have two just sides that are just so contradictory, right? It seems it's almost like split in the middle. Time for them to be released. Horrible thing that happened to them. You got another side. We get it in our comments all the time. Hey man, do the crime, do the time. You should be in there for life. So that's what makes this story so fascinating. Here's another thing too. You mentioned you updated your book in 2024. The original was in 2018. One of the other things you added was this alleged jailhouse confession by O.J. Simpson when the Menendez were in LA County with him. Can you give us that story? We're coming on the 31-year anniversary of the verdict in the O.J. trial. This guy over here knows a few things about it, by the way. But what allegedly did O.J. say?
Actually, 30th year, because it's 2025.
Yeah, 30th year of the verdict.
Yeah.
Correct. 31 years from the murders. But that's chilling, too, just to think that O.J. worked for Hertz. Jose worked for Hertz. O.J. really was over at their house for dinner a couple times. The boys knew him.
It is a weird connection.
It's really 6 degrees of separation. Every major story is connected somehow. So, yes, Jose Menendez was actually the guy who put OJ in the famous TV commercials where he's running through the airports in the 1970s talking about Hertz. And actually, OJ came to the Menendez house in Princeton several times for dinner, and he met the brothers when they were young boys. And so fast forward to 1994. Eric Menendez was watching the O.J. Bronco chase on TV from the LA County Jail, and the sheriff's deputies had Eric clean up the pod in the cell because somebody was going to be coming in, but they didn't tell him who. And Eric watched the entire chase. And a few hours later, OJ himself came walking down the hallway in handcuffs with sheriff's deputies. So for the first 10 days that OJ was in jail, he was placed in a cell next to Eric Menendez. And so Eric and OJ were actually talking and trading letters to each other. And both brothers spent time with OJ in the attorney room. In the LA County Jail, there is an area called where you meet with your attorneys. And so the attorneys sometimes are late. And so the defendants, like the Menendez brothers or OJ, would be waiting for their attorneys so they would have time to talk to each other. And as crazy as it sounds, Lyle Menendez started giving OJ advice in jail that he should really do a plea bargain and not go to trial. And basically what Lyle told me was that OJ said to him, I can't do that. You know, if I plea out this case, that will be the end of my broadcast and movie career. And so I'm not going to do that.
I think it was going to be end of it anyways. But the whole thing is that OJ is friends with Jose, and then he's in with the brothers, and his loyalty, obviously getting hired from Hertz, is with Jose. So I wonder what those conversations were like as well, if OJ asked, did you do it? And they said, did you do it? And that whole thing kind of going on. But, you know, it's got, that would be the conversation, right? They, you know, reminiscing about the days. And I'm sure the Menendez possibly went to OJ's place in Rockingham because he had tennis courts. And who knows if they've, you know, Lyle and Eric and the Jose and Kitty, I imagine they all got together for dinners. If he hired them for her, it's a big paycheck.
We know that there were Saturday Night Live sketches and other comedy sketches in the 1990s about the Menendez brothers and sketches about OJ. But actually, that's a great idea, that in the future, somebody would do a sketch about the brothers and OJ together in jail.
I mean, that's a movie. That's a short film, maybe. Yeah. Maybe you get 25, 30 minutes out of that. But I'd watch it. Hell, I'd write it. Yeah. I might write that thing.
You think that would have been kind of a little scene in the Ryan Murphy movie, just like a little passing in the jail. Yeah. But this is great.
Hey, Robert, no one's as close to this story as you. Fact. Especially in the media. So has there ever been a point in the 35, 36 years you've been following this, knowing the brothers, knowing the family members, knowing all that you do, that you ever wavered? Have you ever thought maybe it didn't go that way? Maybe they weren't abused? Or is that why, this thing has become such a big part of your life, because you really do believe that they were abused and that this is an injustice? Because me and Kato were even talking last week, and I made a point. I was watching the documentary on Netflix, not Monsters, but the doc. And I'm thinking, God, Eric had that one line where he goes, man, I could talk my psychiatrist into anything. Yeah. So then you're almost thinking, and if you're not as close to the story as you are, we just don't know. We just have to rely on our own opinion and our judgment and our preconceived notions. But are you steadfast 100%? There's absolutely no doubt. I know you believe they deserve to be out of prison, but do you think that abuse happened and that there was a motive for these horrible killings?
So I will say something to you guys that I've never said before. I know too much about this case, and I'm going to leave it at that. There are moments when I waver about certain things. I believe that Eric and Lyle Menendez should be set free after 35 years and 6 months. And also, for the record, I want you to know that over the past 36 years, I've done hundreds of other stories. I was part of the investigative unit at CBS 2 here in LA. Mm-hmm. And so Menendez is not my only story over 36 years. It's been my primary story, the story I'm best known for. However, I believe that there are things, that I'm on the fence about, and some of that might come out after the brothers are set free.
I like that cliffhanger.
I do too. I like the way you set that up there.
I like that. And that could be a year or less, or it could be 3 at the most. There's a very good chance they're getting out.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
One last question is for you. The Ryan Murphy documentary, we know that Dominic Dunn was there. He was part of the OJ trial too. Was there a competition between you two? Because you're two prolific writers. So did you say, okay, tell me.
I was very close to Dominic Dunn. We had completely opposite views about the case, but we used to do debates on Court TV every Friday night, where he would be pro-prosecution, I would be pro-defense. And the greatest anecdote I can share with you about Dominic Dunn is the first day that Lyle Menendez testified. It was very dramatic, that first hour. It just really, the jurors were crying. There were a bunch of reporters who were crying. The family members were crying. And when we took the first break at 2:30, Dominic Dunn grabbed my arm and he said, "Can we go down the hallway away from everybody else? And I want to talk to you." And he looked pale, he looked shaken, and he said to me, "I can't believe that I'm going to say this," because he had been such a cheerleader for the prosecution. He said, "I think that Lyle Menendez is telling the truth." And, I was stunned to hear that. And I said to him, "Well, that's some of the most powerful testimony I've ever seen in a courtroom. And I recommend that anybody who wants to see the first hour of Lyle Menendez's testimony in the first trial, go to Court TV." But fast forward 3 hours later, and we're live on Court TV doing our weekly debate. And they went to Dominic Dunn first. He's the great, famous Dominic Dunn. And so I'm really curious, what's he going to say? And the first thing he said was, "I didn't believe one word coming out of his mouth. He's a complete liar. I didn't believe anything. So I know I've got about 5 minutes until they come to me. And so I'm thinking to myself, I could bust this guy on national TV right now and say, what about that conversation that you and I had a few hours ago? But I chose not to do that. I thought that would be unprofessional. So when they came to me, I said, Nick, I think that you and I were in different courtrooms this afternoon. That's some of the most powerful testimony I've ever seen.
Wow.
That's great comeback. You both had to stay in character for sure.
Yeah, even though we had opposite viewpoints, we were actually personal friends. He took me to some fantastic parties with A-list movie stars, and he took me to the Vanity Fair party one year. And so I really liked him personally. Yeah, we just disagreed about the case.
Yeah, well, that makes good TV though when you disagree and you take different sides all the time. You know, that's a moral dilemma for you because you could have called him out, but he was pretty established at that time, and that might have ruined your personal relationship with him, embarrassing him like that.
I disagree with you, Tom.
What the hell are you talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about. I gotta go to commercial. It's a commercial. I'm sorry, you got us going now.
Even Zeus agrees with me on that one.
Like I said, I debated for 5 minutes before they came to me.
Right.
I knew I was going to say something. I wasn't sure what. And I went back and forth for 5 minutes. It's really crazy.
All right. Hey, by the way, congratulations on having the longest story ever published in Playboy magazine. 14,000 words. Holy crap. That's half a book. Awesome. Speaking of something with the word play in it, did you know Kato was on the cover of Playgirl magazine?
Dressed of
Playgirl. By the way, Kato, I got to give Robert this chance. I ask our guests all the time, especially somebody who was here covering a different story. It had to be all hands on deck with whatever media outlet you were at the time in 1994. So here's your chance. You got a question? Journalist mind like yours for the one and only Kato Kaelin?
Well, sure. The obvious question would be, did you ever know about the connection between Jose Menendez and OJ, or
I did not know that. I don't think I knew that because it would have kind of stood out in my mind. I think the first time I heard it was the Netflix show, the documentary. The connection was I didn't know that at all. So and I didn't know that he was hired him for Hertz, because let's face it, that was sort of I think that's what made OJ. OJ was sort of the first African-American was really white. He was loved by both sides. And that's why it was such a big commercial success. Hertz took a chance, and it was like the biggest campaign that lasted for years. Even to this day, people, I do a lot of airports and all that, and people always say, did he do it and all that? But they always bring up Hertz, the Hertz commercial. So they have the rights to that commercial. I'm just wondering what athlete's going to eventually get that again.
Hey, Robert, let me give you a little scoop here. Kato and Jose had beef because Kato auditioned for Menudo and he didn't make it. So there was always this overriding tension.
As I said,
Tom got it wrong. It was in sync. It was in sync, not Menudo. Por supuesto.
Hey, Robert, what can we promote for you? I mean, obviously the book is out, the second version of it. What else?
The book, the re-release version came out last fall. This is the Brazilian edition of the book. My publisher, Ben Miller Books, has released 15 foreign translations. I'm on the bestseller list in Brazil and France and in 15 different countries. You can read the book in your local language. The book is coming out in Russia and Czechoslovakia later this year.
You're going to have a hell of a book tour.
The final edition of the Menendez murders will be out after the brothers are released.
We'll include that in our show, right? The books?
Sure.
Okay,
yeah, we'll put the links up there. Hey, you're writing their book because someone's got to. Yeah. So you can break that news on our show sometime. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, by the way, and again, the memberships. We're starting this thing. We're going to do live chats, live feeds. It's going to be amazing. We have Tom Lang coming up on September 26th at 3 p.m. Grab a membership right now. Robert, I'd love to talk to you about coming on a live stream with Kato and I and our members where they could ask you some questions, and we'll make it worth your while on that. If you can give us some extra time
in studio, Robert. Yes.
And we can just do that digitally. That'll be easy. You could be in your apartment or your house in Burbank. I can be in Manhattan Beach. My daughter starts at UCLA next week, so she'll be in Westwood. I'll be in Westwood all the time. Yeah,
Congrats.
so that's exciting. Yeah. Okay, Robert, this is fantastic. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on, but man, congrats on all the work you've done on this and on your whole career, because you've had a hell of a journalistic career. So congrats to you on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was a fantastic show.
Yeah, it was great. Now, we were talking about your autograph show.
Yeah.
We talked about that for weeks, and it happened last weekend. If you can give me any pictures, I know they're pretty tight about that, but if you got anything, I'll include it in this episode. But how did it go? The K-Train Unleashed.
Totally on fire, and it was 9 years. You know, I did the Fox News show before the actual show. That helped out a lot, because I would say that 95% of the people saw me promoting it, where Marla gave me the 11-minute segment, and so many people flocked to my area. I had a person, a buddy of mine, John David Kelsey, helped me out, and he laughed for 10 hours straight. We had an incredible time. The thing is, I never took one break. I didn't even go to the restroom. I stayed the whole time because I always had people, and I didn't want to miss anybody.
You don't want to disappoint anybody. You're like Scott Hansen on the Red Zone.
And
just
people
keep going and going and going.
People brought their Playgirl magazine. I signed that too.
Multiple times.
Yeah, no, they brought. It was so much memorabilia. It was one incredible time. I'm sure they're going to have him back at some show, and then now I'm going to go off to do another show this week.
All right, you ready? You got your speech ready?
Yep.
For the
I wrote.
It's a room full of law enforcement, right?
Detectives, police force, and yes, I have it down. I'm gonna be enlightening, but I'm gonna put humor into it with the
How can
a little
you not?
bit. Yes.
Okay, I can't wait to hear the highlights of that.
Yes, I am. I said I'm the first person to be in the witness protection program for Airbnb. Anyways, that's an opening.
All right. Good job.
Thank you.
Live stream Tom Lang, September 26th. Join our membership. Follow the K-Train and me on social media for the one and only Kato K-Train Kaelin. I'm Tom Zenner. Thanks for watching Tom Zenner Scandal, and we will see you very, very soon.